Because you raised two important elements. One was your contact with the panel, how often you were in contact with them. And the other point is your responsibilities having been hijacked. Those were the words you used by the then CDS.
dinañ ñëw ci mbir moomu li laal ñaari fànn mooy benn bi jokkoo bi nga xam ne yaa ngi koo am ak ñi nekk ci panel bi ak ñi nga xam ne noonu lañ foo xarñee li nga xam ne moo war na doon sa taxawaay ci panel bi te ki nga xam ne mooy Tamba mu jëloon ko ci sa loxo.
And I might add a third element which we would discuss would be the issue of control over the work of the panel.
dinañ ñëw ci beneen ma yokk ci sax beneen muy ñetta mooy ki nga xam ne moo war a jiite lépp loo xam ne moo di dox ci panel bi ci loxoom la war a nekk.
So we would come to that. But for now, let us focus on the issue of contact between you and the panel.
dinañ ñëw ci loolu waaye nag ñu njëkk a commencé yow ci sa boppa jokkoo bi nekk sa diggante ak panel bi.
And what precipitated that is your suggestion that after you addressed them the first time, you did not go back there again. Well, now you have changed that to say, well, you have been there one more time, or you had been there to brief them about this lack of cohesion in the work of the panel. But I am suggesting to you that perhaps you have visited the panel more frequently than you have made it, and think about that and give us an answer.
am nga da nga njëkkoon a wax ne panel bi yow benn yoon rek nga fa demoon bañ commencé bi ubbi ko ca nga fa géej a dem nga ñëwaat dellu si waat ne léegi-léegi daan nga fa dem li ko waral mooy ñàkk a bennoo bi nga xam ne moo nekk seen diggante ñàkk a déggoo ci benn kàddu léegi moom laa bëgg nga waxal ma naka la demee.
Mr. Sambou, I have just received a copy of your closing remarks. This is personal. We don't want to see it. We don't want to know what it is you're going to say, because we don't want the suggestion or the idea that the commission directs witnesses what they have to say, or would coordinate with the witnesses what it is they're going to say. This is your closing remarks. Feel free to say what you think needs to be said to the Gambian people at this time. So we have no input in it. I have not seen it. I have just returned it to you as it was given to me. I just thought we should put that on the record so that it is known. Please.
May I reply on this?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, the reason for lead counsel receiving this, my copy of the closing remarks, was that I left it with somebody to type it for me.
Okay.
I was anticipating to receive it before the opening of the session.
Okay.
I decided to formalize it and send it over here.
Pour mu leral nak lolu rek moy li tax lead counsel jot kayit bobu nonu mo nekkone daf ko fi bayyi won pour ñu bindal ko ci mbindam machine tay sentu won ne dana ko jot bala ñoy tok.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Sambou. I just thought that we could clarify this because, I mean, everything that is done here is scrutinized or would later be subjected to scrutiny. So we just clarify some of these things. Now let's go back to the issue. I hope you have reflected on your answer. You have visited the panel when it was doing its work at least a few times, to say the least.
Well, ñu eggal foog naa feeñ ci sa tontu yu ne panel bi dem nga fa ay yoon benn yoon pour seet ñoom ni nga xam ne noonu la sa liggéey seen liggéey bi di doxee.
Naturally, lead counsel, as head of the NIA and chairman, supposed to be administrative head of the panel, it was my duty to make sure that everything went well. In the mornings,
ci makama yi nga xamne ni mom la rango di ki nga xamne ni moy borom kër buntu liggéey kay bobu te wara nek chairman bi nga xamne ni moy chairman kureli gastu kat yoy nonu warna sa bu nek xam li nga xamne ni moy doxalin bobu.
In the mornings, when once in a while I would go,
suba yi lego legi na de dem,
greet them,
gis len,
asked if everything was okay.
Seet ndax yépp mu ngi dox ni mu wara doxé.
From the administrative point of view,
comme ni nga xamné ni depo nak lu aju ci walli jiti doxalin bobu.
papers, pens, tea, coffee, and all that stuff.
And
I would leave.
Of course. So it was incorrect when you said after the first day you've never gone back there. The fact of the matter is you would visit occasionally to see how things were going.
Wandugon diga bo waxe ne yow bañ ko ubbe rek ba nga garal fa sa ay kaddu ci nga fa geej diga bi dal moy leg ding fay faral di dem sa yu nek pour seet liggéey bi ni mo doxé.
Yes, what I meant, it must have been a slip of the tongue. What I meant was I did not go there and I never interfered in their job.
Waaw non na amal rek njumtel gi meñ rek ndam lima doon wax rek mo nek ne dem ma won fa pour di seet wala di dugal suma loxo ci ni nga xamé non lañ daan liggéey.
May I comment? And here comes your question or your issue of control of the panel.
Légui nak ñew nañ ci sa laajte bi nga xamné ni wala fann bi nga xamné ni yang ko jëmali lu jëm ci walli tek loxo lu aju ci walli kuréeli gestu bobu.
Panel was not under my control.
Panel bobu de nekkuton ci suma ron loxo.
It was more under the control of the then Chief of Defense Staff.
Dafa gënoon nek nak ci loxo ki nga xamné mo nekkon Chief of Defense Staff.
And practically the chairman, Mr. Haidara.
Ki nga xamné ni danaka dal mo dekkon chairman bobu di Mr. Haidara.
The two things are different. De facto leadership of the panel, de jure leadership of the panel. These two are different.
Okay.
We are told that the formal chairman of the panel was Haidara. Effectively, therefore, he was the de jure leader of the panel. Who was the de facto leader of the panel? And what I mean is who was the leader in actual fact, in practice, who was the leader of that panel? Mo la pato ko ci olof.
Dafa gudda.
Dafa gudda lol. ñaari mbir ci nekk mooy ki nga xam ne moom lañ dénka njiiti panel gi ak ki nga xam ne moom moo jël njiiti panel bi jiital ko boppam ñaar yooyu dañ ute kañ ko dénka ak ka ko yore.
Ka ko yore moo doon Lang Tombong Tamba.
The one controlling was Long Tamba. I said it. And I will say it again.
Yes, tell us in English.
I have said it that the de facto, as lead counsel suggested, was the then Chief of Defense Staff, Lang Tombong Tamba.
Why do you say that? We know that the jure was Haidara because he was formally designated. Ma wax ko ci wolof xam nañ ne kañ dénkoon njiitaayi panel bi mooy Mamadou Haidara lan moo tax nga ne Lang Tombong mooy woon njiit li.
Ma wax ko ci wolof Lang Tombong moo amoon direct contact ak president.
Lang Tombong was direct contact with the president.
Lang Tombong moo nekkoon foofu ci jamono bu nekk.
Lang Tombong was always present there.
Li jógee ci panel bi di dem State House ak li jógee State House di ñëw ci panel bi ci moom la daan jaar.
All information that is from the panel to the state house and from the state house to the panel passes through him.
Could you say daan xam dara?
I never knew anything.
Ma ca daan xam dara.
I never knew anything of it.
Here again I will clarify something.
Dana fi leeralaat dara.
During a lot of testimonies,
witnesses
will say the NIA. The NIA took prisoners from mile 2, brought them to NIA and took them back in plain clothes. Members of the state guards were also in plain clothes.
State House, and
they were also in the panel. Premises where the panel was situated in was in the NIA,
of
which I was head. My opinion about bringing the panel to the NIA or setting up the panel was not sought.
bu ko fe nak li nga xamne mo nekkon suma xalat pour indi panel bobu fofu duton do xamne ni ci man la joye.
The then president decided to do things on his own.
fi nekkon president bo na dafa dogalon pour defa mbir min ci li nga xamne mo wër xelam rek.
And use his liaison who was the chief of defense staff then
di jëfo ki nga xamne mo nekkon ki jité won soldat yi jamono bobu
to do things.
pour ñu def niñ ko bëgge.
I was just there like a figurehead.
Man kañ dama fa nekkon rek ci ab tour.
That is why my name obviously will naturally surface.
bu ko fe nak lool moy tax suma tour say bu nek rek dañ ko tuddu.
And I will be adversely named.
Dinañ ma di bëgg di tuddu say bu ne.
I wish to put this on the record.
Li nak dama bëgg ko tek mu ci bi mu leer.
Thank you.
Jërëjëf.
What you said is obviously very clear.
li nga wax loolu moom lu leer la.
But it has to be subjected to a little more interrogation.
waaye nag dafa laaj nag beneen gëstu yoo xam ne moom lañ ci war a toftal.
And the reason for this is the Commission is only interested in the truth with a view to be able to determine, what actually happened.
li ko waral nag mooy commission bi moom li leen itteel rek mooy dëgg gi ndax ñu mun a xam sa dëgg li nga xam ne moo fa doon dox.
From what you have said,
yow comme li nga wax.
it appears to me that there were two lines of communication between the president and the panel.
dafa mel ni ci man daal dafa mel ni ñaari fànni jokkoo moo doon dox ci diggante président bi ak ci panel bi.
Yes, indeed.
Wow.
One line of communication was between the president and yourself.
benn fànni jokkoo bi mooy woon diggante président bi ak yow mii ci sa boppa.
Then to the panel.
de pare eggee ko panel bi.
And the second line,
beneen fànn bi nag.
the president to Langtombong.
président bi eggee ko Langtombong.
And the panel.
ak panel bi.
Is this true?
It is true. I had a moral or whatever legal, official, administrative duty to be reporting to the president, to brief him, and I did that.
Mon na cër bo xamné ni nak waron na doon warugal pour may jël ay bataxel diko ag président bi ci panel bobu té def nako.
But the issue is, by the time I got my reports, daily reports, typed them, looked into them, edited them, or analyzed them to take to the president, I was already giving him stale news.
bu koy fee nag léegi nag saa bu ma jotee bataaxel yooyu noonu ci jamono bi nga xam ne ci lañ koy def bindam tubaab ci machine bi dal di ko seggaat dal di ko seetaat ba seet naka laa koy àggale président bi su àggee rek dafay fekk sax tardé na.
That rendered my effectiveness and efficiency useless.
loolu nag bu boobaa dafay nasax lool li nga xam ne ni moo nekkoon suma warugal ci mbiri panel boobu ci wàlli yóbbu bataaxel.
How would the president receive the information in advance of your report?
naka la président bi di jotee xibaar yow balaa sa xibaar bi di egg ci moom.
Through the second line of information that lead counsel just mentioned.
Comme ni nga xam ne rek noonu la ko lead counsel feeñalee.
I did not say it.
Yes, you suggested.
No, I just dissected what you said.
Well, I agree
and brought out that element because you said it.
nekkul ne maa ko wax de man dama tànnaat rek yow ci li nga xam ne moom nga wax ma dal di ci jukki loolu wax ko waaye yow yaa ko wax.
I'm not the one testifying. You're the one testifying.
man nekkul ne maa fi toog da di joxe suma ay seede yow mii la.
So you suggested that the president was communicating with the CDS.
yow nga ne président bi mu ngi doon jokkoo ak CDS bi.
And he was getting information from him.
te mu ngi doon jotee xibaar ci moom.
Isn't that what you said?
Very rightly so.
So
very rightly so.
So it is not lead counsel who is suggesting to you that Langtombong was had a direct line of communication with the president. So let's establish
lead counsel bi man maa ki nga xam ne maa la doon xalal ne Langtombong dafa amoon jokko direct moom moo président bi ñu leeral foofu.
May I suggest that lead counsel was just corroborating what I said?
Kana mun naa leeral rek ne lead counsel da doon gën a féddali rek ci li may wax.
No, I withdraw my statement.
Yes, you are wrong.
Fekkee dama juum nag ma weddi.
With all due respect.
Lead counsel was just recasting what you said so that you can also adopt it again.
We agree.
Okay.
Nangu na.
So now with these two lines of communication, you are saying you are often beaten to the president.
mel ni ñaari fànni joko yi nga xam ne moom lañ fi wax nii ci gannaaw bon su sukkandiko ci la fa mel ni yow dañ la dee jiitu ci président bi.
Yes.
Wow.
And he was not the only one.
And who else?
Akan.
I have heard
Akanati.
I have heard Alaji Martin here.
That
he was in the panel at times as an observer. And he would report to the president at the end of the day. Same thing happened with the then and the late Captain Tumbul Tamba. Ak Maliam Munku Musa Jammeh.
Wala Musa Jammeh Maliam Mungu.
They had their personal telephones with them.
Dañ daan amé seen téléphone bop.
And from the panel they would step out and call the president.
Té buñ génné ci panel bi rek ñu jël di jël téléphone président bi.
Or the president would call them.
Wala président bi sax call leen.
And they would give him feedback.
Buba nak dañ ko nettali li nga xamné ni mo fa daan dox.
By the time I wake up in the morning to come to work, news had already settled in State House.
Bala ma xey bay ew di ñew liggéey da fay fekk sax bataxel yoyu ag nañ State House.
That is the evidence that we have received from witnesses.
Lolu moy sédé yi nga xamné jot nañ ko ci ñu fi doon joxe seeni sédé.
Those who are the State House representatives in the panel.
Ñooñu ñoy ñi nga xamné ñoo téwalon State House ca panel ba.
Okay, but what I am driving at is not so much the flow of information back to Yaya Jammeh. It is about your knowledge of what was happening at the panel. You knew what was going on in the panel.
There were other representatives of the NIA in the panel.
Who?
Some two boys were there. I wouldn't remember. His son was Tambajang. And the other one was Yusuf Afai.
And these people would report to you?
Yes, and I would call them, ask them to verify or confirm what I got from the chairman, Mr. Haidara.
In view of all that, would you accept that you are inextricably linked with the work of the panel?
Not always. On the basis of need. When I had my doubts, yes, I would call on the boys. And they would tell me. Or when the feedback varied from that of the chairman, what I got from outside, or from the boys.
The point I was making is you are linked inextricably.
Lima don feñal fi moy ne yow amna joko bu degel bo xamne am nga ko ak ñoom.
You are the administrative head or the administrative supervisor of the panel. I think those were the words you used in your statement.
Yes.
Well, so therefore, you also shared ownership over the work of the panel.
Bon melni yow tamit bokk nga ci li nga xamne modi momé fi lepp lo xamne modi xew ci panel bi.
Administratively, yes.
Wow, ci li nga xamne mu ngi aju ci walé dogali liggéey bi, waaw.
We would come back to that.
Dinañ jël ci
Tell us about the decision making in the panel.
wax ñu li nga xam ne ñoo amee baati dogal bi foofu ci panel bi.
I think it was Langtombong and Haidara.
yaakaar naa loolu mu ngi nekkoon ci diggante Langtombong ak Haidara.
Why do you say that?
lu tax nga wax loolu.
They were the most senior officers.
parce que ñoom ñoo fa gënoon a nekk ay kilifa.
But we have agreed that even though Haidara was junior to Langtombong in terms of rank in the security services, Haidara was chairman. So formally speaking, rank or position appeared not to have mattered.
Why nangu tona ni degala Haidara ci wàlli maxaama moo gën a suufe Langtombong waaye nag terewutoon ne moom mooy ki nga xam ne moo jiite woon li nga xam ne mooy doxin bi fa doon dox wala sax mun nañoo wax ne maxaama bi niñ koy wante daa amul solo foofu.
May I please remind lead counsel that I did not appoint Haidara as chairman of the panel.
Man naa fàttali lead counsel ne man nekkuma woon ki nga xam ne maa tànnoon Haidara def ko mu jiite kuréeli gestu boobu.
And that point to me is irrelevant. I'm sorry.
kon nag man kàddu yi daal nekkul lu am solo ci suma wax ji.
You may have missed the point. What I was trying to allude at is that the fact that they were the two most senior people in the panel, in fact, is not reason why they had control. I mean, there may be other reasons why they had control in the decision-making process.
Come again, sorry.
Lima jema wax fi moy ne yow danga ne ñom ñaar ñoo amé won kaddu gi ci panel bi parce que ñom ñaar la seen maxama gëna kawé manit ma won la ne Haidara Langtombong maxama mo gëna kawé waye taxut jëluñ Langtombong jox ko njit li ñu ngi jël njit li jox ko Haidara bon mu ngi melni maxama taxut ñom ñu am kaddu amna leneen luy tax ñom ñu am kaddu gi ci panel bi yow ci sa gis-gis lolan la
loolu nag nga baalal ma duma ci mën a xam dara parce que nekkuma woon foofu ak ñoom.
I may not know much about that because I was not there.
Langtombong boo gisee mu toog foofu.
If you see Langtombong was there.
beneen interest waaye moo amoon na beneen liggéey bu mu waroon a mun a def lu tax ba du fa mun a toog ba Haidara ñëw nekk ak boos.
Maybe there was another interest.
Kilifa kuréel googu.
But he could have been somewhere with responsibilities. That why Haidara should be there as chairman.
You have told us that your responsibilities were hijacked. And the word hijacked was your suggestion. These were your own words. You said they were hijacked by Langtombong. Can you tell the commission how that happened?
I don't know. He must have had his own agenda or he must have had his own interest like you are asking now. Or maybe he must have been appointed to sit there.
If I should know, I would have tell you.
But what functions of yours did he hijack from you?
Yow ci sa wàllu taxawaay liggéey bi nga xam ne moom nga fa waroon rek ci ban fànn moom la jël foo xam ne koy sa loxo.
If he were not he did not permanently post himself there or he were not permanently posted there to be overseeing every day practically the commission interfering in their work, the panel to be interfering in their work, I think I would have been free enough to control the panel and give them the sense of direction in my own way as an administrator and maybe a security head to run the panel.
Bu fekkee ne yóbbuutoon boppam foofu wala ebalu ñoon ko foofu noonu mu nekk fa toujours danaa doon nekk koo xam ne nii danaa doon am suma sago boo xam ne nii mayit danaa doon doxal li nga xam ne ni moom lañ séntu si man nga xam ne nii mooy doxal nag li nga xam ne ni wala di bàyyi xel lu jëm ci wàlli tëddali ni kuréel googu di doon gestu.
You use the word hijacked. Might it be the case that you ceded your responsibilities to him?
If he had asked me to cede my responsibilities, I would have done so.
Didn't
ask me to cede, he took them.
Did you have a conversation with him about this?
No. He did.
No.
You acquiesced?
Come again?
You acquiesced? You resigned to the situation.
Lead counsel, if you remember our tete-a-tete,
lead counsel, we were talking
about the panel. I told you that I withdrew or in Wolof, ma bedeku. If that means resigning, let it be so. The situation during that time, I have written it in my statement, that it was like an undeclared state of emergency in the country. Everything was directed towards that aborted coup. Everybody was a suspect, including my good self. I was treading on very soft ground, even whereas I was Director General. If I were not careful in my treading, I would have been torn around and put in the other camp. And who betide me? That is why I folded my arms and kept indoors in my office. And would only see Haidara at the end of the day. But my constant, my touch, as lead counsel would say, with the panel, was to know what was happening so that I'll be on the right path. And also be very careful. This is the issue.
And indeed, you knew what was going on in the panel.
I was bound to know.
And tell us what you knew was the system, the modus operandi of working. We have had several witnesses on this issue. How was evidence collected?
I said in the beginning that the panel started off nicely, especially when they were working during the day. But then things took a drastic turn.
But let's interrogate that first part of your statement, the panel starting very nicely, especially when they were working in the day. This panel started off very badly, and in fact started working at night, and not during the day.
Legi nañ wax li nga xamne mom nga ñika wax ne bi mo commencé ré mu doon dox ci anam yu rafet yo xamne non lañ doon doxali seen liggéey ci bés bi buñ ko commencé wa na panel bi légui daf dé nek jamono jo xamne ay guddi lañu liggéey du doon bëcc
dedet panel bi sax day tambalé wuñ seen liggéey ci anam bu rafet anam bu ñaaw lañ ko tàmbalee ba pare it tàmbalee wuñ seen liggéey ci bés bi ci guddi gi lañ doon def seen liggéey li ci ëpp loo wax ci loolu.
noonu lañ ma ko yëgalee.
That's how I was informed.
noonu lañ ma ko daan baatalee.
That's how I used to be informed.
man ma wàcca ci ground bi find out.
Might it be that is the way you choose to characterize it now?
But
the reality is, okay, let's do it this way. First day, Bunja Dabo was arrested.
Bunja Dabo ci lañ ko jappa.
Correct?
Non la.
I wouldn't remember.
Munuma fateleku. Munuma ko fateleku.
Bunja Dabo was one of the first to be arrested.
Bunja Dabo mom lañ jëkka jappa.
Man impression bi ma jox.
The impression that was
given, fine.
They were working fine.
And the suspects are cooperate.
And the suspects were cooperating.
When I found out that they started beating them, I went to the head of state. And I told him.
Let's take things chronologically, step by step. You have said that in your statement. And you have, I think it's paragraph 17 of your statement, you have said something interesting and we would come to that. That is actually the modus operandi and who was responsible for what. But it behoves us to correct the record. The starting itself, which you said was they were working nicely, is contrary to the evidence we received. And that they were working, when they started off, they were working in the day, is contrary to the evidence we received. In fact, the evidence we received was that the witnesses, once apprehended, are taken to Mile 2 prison straight away. And later at night, around 2 a.m., they are taken to the panel. That was the system. The witnesses would go before the panel during the day after they have gone through a whole lot of sessions, either with torturers or investigators. Is that true?
That is why I said that is the impression I was given.
Let's not talk about impressions now. Let's talk about the real fact.
Lead counsel, if you would please allow me.
Lead counsel, I
also have something to say.
Of course, you would. You would have every time to say what you have to say.
The impression I was given was this. It is possible that it's contrary. Because the facts and the statements are there. The testimonies are there. Nobody can argue against that. I asked for feedback. Somebody reports to me. Feedback me was very nice. But when I found out the facts, I went down the ground. And I took up the issue. And felt very foolish. I have said it here, and that's why lead counsel said I have said something very interesting, and we will come to that.
Let us not go ahead of ourselves and take it step by step. The impressions you said were not true. Correct?
Accepted.
Wow, nanguna.
And the truth of what was happening was that a lot of these witnesses or these suspects were taken before the panel late at night.
But
why?
I have also said in my statement, and I'll say it here, I
left
to go home every day, 7:30, 7:45. I will not leave my house until I come back to work in the morning. So what took place there during the night, I did not know until I am informed in the morning, and I hold my head. That was not part of my professional ethics. It was not part of my training. And I did not receive that type of training either at school, at home, or from the university. It was against my principles.
What was so abhorrent
and went beyond my control?
What was so abhorrent that it was contrary to your principles, beyond your control, which caused you to hold your head every time you hear such information?
The tortures and the beatings of the detainees.
We have heard from Alaji Martin, corroborated by several witnesses, that the panel had a working method. That if a person is taken before the panel, and the person is not singing like this tune that they want him to sing, they will call in the junglers. And the junglers would take the person outside. They will brutalize the person and would bring the person before the panel at another time. And the person is subjected to another round of questioning. And that happens until they have a confession.
I heard Alaji Martin.
Was he lying or was he truthful?
He was not lying. He was not lying.
So what was he saying?
He was saying the truth. They had orders from their boss. Force the detainees to say the so-called truth.
Could you take that again?
They had orders from their boss. From State House. To make their detainees say the truth, the so-called truth.
The truth according to who?
According to them, according to their boss.
In a sense, you have told us these confessions were coerced or extorted out of these witnesses.
I have.
I
have.
And these confessions were the basis of the prosecution of these witnesses, of these suspects.
So I was made to understand.
But you would have been the person to submit the reports.
I would ask a rhetorical question. I'm not supposed
Just
to ask
answer the
questions.
questions instead of asking me questions. I asked the questions, Mr. Sambou.
Yes, that's what I said. I would ask a rhetorical question.
Just answer the questions.
Was there any? I did not have a choice. I was supposed to take a daily report to the president.
Mr. Sambou, you have training in ethics.
Yes.
Mr. Sambou, jangal nañ la ci ni nga xamné non liggéey bi wara doxé.
You had all the training to make you a consummate professional.
Jangal nañ la janga mo xamné yépp nga ci sukkandiku pour doxal sa liggéey ni nga xamné non la wara doxé.
True.
Dëgg la.
True. Dëgg la. Did you state anywhere in your reports that these confessions that I am sending to you were obtained by way of torture, they were fraud, they were fraudulent, they were extorted out of these witnesses? Did you say that in any of your reports?
Na report yoyu nga don binda amna ci ben jamono yo xamne binda nga fa ne man day xibaar gi ma la jotali ni dañ ko jëlé ci seeni borom ci ay anam yo xamne dañ leen ko forcer ci xatal leen ba nga xamne joxe nañ xibaar yi.
I told the president that the detainees were tortured.
Wax na president bi ne detainees yi ñi japp
They were made to make their reports. I did tell him.
Dañ leen di métital pour ñu mëna wax li nga
xamné no.
And he giggled.
And he giggled.
Wawe mu ré.
And then said what?
Dal di ci tek lan?
In fact, lead counsel, I was made to understand that whilst these prisoners or these detainees were being tortured,
man nak yek na ne jamono bi nga xamné ñu ngi dal di métital ñi japp ni
somebody invariably would be there with his telephone.
Légui amna ko xamné dafa amé fofu téléphone am ci fofu.
And the president would be hearing how the person is shouting or crying.
Dal di téléphone bu ko defé président bi di dégg borom mom naka la mo yuxo.
Which means by morning when the report goes to him, he already knows.
What
else can I tell him?
We are talking about a completely different question. Your report that you compiled and submitted included confessions by these suspects that you know were fraudulently obtained.
True
or false?
Did
you respond now?
I said true.
And these reports were the basis of the prosecutions of these suspects.
I'm sorry, when they were being prosecuted, I was already not there.
Doesn't even make it any better.
I didn't know.
Didn't make it any better. The system was you submit reports to the Attorney General's chambers, which would form the basis of a legal opinion, and charges are drawn, and the person is arraigned before court. You knew the drill. You work in both institutions.
xibaar yooyu nga xam ne moom ngaa joxe ci la ñoo sukkandiku jël ko yóbbu ko ci kanam attekaay ji ci la ñoo atte seeni borom yow xam nga mbir yi naka laa doxee.
Those were orders from Yaya Jammeh.
loolu ay ndigal la xam ne jóge ko ci Yaya Jammeh déggoo la dañ leen daan bind.
But of course you submitted reports.
I did.
waaye di ngay joxe ay xibaar.
And those reports were the basis of the prosecutions.
Report boobu ci la ñoo sukkandiku nag pour yóbbu leen ci kanami loi attekaay bi.
True or false?
Dëgg la wala déet?
Dëgg la.
And it was because of these reports that some of these people were sentenced to death.
Ngir report boobu sax sukkandiku ci report boobu loo tax ba ñenn ci ñoom sax dañ leen tëj pour rey leen.
or 20-something years in prison.
Wala ñu tëj leen ci kaso bi ñaar fukki at ak dara.
I am saying that
maa ngi wax ne
when they were being prosecuted,
jamono biñ leen doon atte
all these files prepared, I was not there.
wala bi ñoo jagal nag seen files yooyu nekkuma woon fa.
But you were not there physically, but you were there in the sense that you submitted the reports that were the basis of these prosecutions.
Nekkuloo fa woon de ci sa jëmma de waaye li nga xam ne ñoom ci report boobu lañ doon sukkandiku yow yaa ki nga xam ne yaa ko dajale jébbale ko.
Lead counsel. The circumstances under which we worked.
But we will come to circumstances later. Let's first establish the facts, and then we would go to circumstances later. We cannot front load circumstances, then come to the facts. Let's first establish the facts. The reports that were the subject, that were the basis for the prosecution, were the reports that you submitted.
Report yi nga xam ne ci lañ doon sukkandiku pour yóbbu leen ci attekaay bi yow report boobu yow yaa ki nga xam ne yow yaa ko joxe.
True or false?
It was my duty to submit reports, and I did.
Suma liggéey la woon pour ma àggale report yooyu te def naa ko.
But Mr. Sambou, you talked about ethics. Don't you think it was your legal duty to provide correct and lawful reports?
Wax nga fi yoon yi nga xam ne ci lañ war a jaar sukkandiku ci wàllu doxal liggéey ci ni war a doxee ndax fooguloo ne yow sa waru gal nga pour nga joxe report boo xam ne bu dëggu la nga feeñal ko ni nga
xam ne moom la luwa santaane.
And then be sent to mile 2 along with them.
Bu boobaa nag ñu daldi ma yóbbu mile 2 ak ñoom.
You preferred yourself to them.
Moom dafa mel yow sa bopp moo la gënal ñoom.
I had a job to do.
Am naa liggéey bu may def.
I was supposed to obey.
Dama waroon na dégg ndigal.
A dictator who knew nothing but do it. Do it.
I understand the circumstances, and we would go to the circumstances, and you'd be given the opportunity to talk about the circumstances.
Hamna anam yi nga xamne non la mbiri doon doxé de te dinañ ci ñew bu ko défé yow tam di nga mëna am yoon pour wax ñu ni nga xamne non la yëf yi doon doxé jamono bobu.
I mean, it looks to me from what you have said.
Dafa melni man ciow ci lima jëlé ci say cadeau.
Let me just break it down first. You knew that these confessions were illegally obtained. True or false?
Amon nga ni cadeau yoy niñ ko jëlé ci seeni borom andul ak loi. Dëggal wala di.
Non more circumstances, yes.
Waaw ci comme yenn nim gëna waré dal waaw.
You knew that these reports, these confessions were going to form the basis for the prosecution of the suspects.
Hamon nga ne report bobu nga xamne mom nga joxe ci lañu sukkandiko pour mëna atté ñooñu nga xamne ñom lañ yobbu ci kanam atté kay bi.
That subsequent step I wouldn't have known because my job was to give intelligence report and I gave.
Loolu nak da duutoon loo xam ne ni dinaa doon xam ne fa la mooy mujjee ndax suma liggéey moo doon pour nag dal di bind bataaxel boobu dal di ko joxe te loolu laa def.
But Mr. Sambu, these were not intelligence reports. These were investigative reports. These were investigative reports with the aim of them being used to produce legal consequences.
Mr. Sambu, li xibaar la boo xam ne ci ay gëstu lañ ko jëlee ci la faxe ko pour jël ko jëfoo ko nag ci anam yoo xam ne dañ ko sukkandiku ci jamono ji leen a yóbbu ci attekaay bi.
That was the case, isn't it?
Noonu la demee woon ndax déet.
That was the case, yes.
Waaw noonu la demee woon.
And therefore you knew that those reports you were submitting would be the basis of prosecution.
Te xamoon nga itamit ne report boobu nga xam ne moom nga doon joxe ci la ñu sukkandiku pour yóbbu leen ci attekaay bi.
And you cannot claim ignorance because you have been trained in the law, you have worked in Ministry of Justice, you have worked in NIA, you were a seasoned civil servant at the highest levels, you knew the system, you knew how these things would be used.
Te nag doo mun a wax ne dang ci xamul dara de ndaxte yow liggéey xam nga ci wàllu loi liggéey nga ci wàllu attekaay liggéey nga NIA liggéey nga ci li nga xam ne moo di nguur gi bon mbir yi xam nga ne ni noonu la war a demee.
I wouldn't know how Yaya Jammeh would want to use them because he was a Machiavellian.
Because duma don xam naka la ko Yaya Jammeh
What he wanted was his report, and I submitted them.
Lim bëggoon mooy mu àggale reportam te jot reportam te àggale naa ko.
Let's break that. Let's break it down. He wanted incriminatory reports and not objective reports.
Danga bëggoon report boo xam ne dafay dugal seeni borom waaye nekkul report boo xam ne dafa jaar ci yoon.
True or false?
Dëgg la wala déet.
He wanted incriminatory reports, yes.
Waaw dama bëggoon bataaxel boo xam ne daf leen ay dugal.
And he put in place arrangements to secure those incriminatory reports.
Dal dina def nag ay tëralin yoo xam ne ci laa mun a jaar pour jot ci report yooyu nga xam ne dafa dugal seeni borom.
True or false?
Only he knew what he wanted.
Dëgg la moom rek moo xamoon li bëggoon.
Only he knew what he wanted.
Are you reversing your earlier response that he wanted incriminatory reports?
No, I'm not.
Good. So, why do you think he brought in the junglers? But let me just take that back. Let me read out from your statement something that you said, and that would help me to ask the next questions.
Harama jàngee ci kàddu yi nga xam ne moom nga bind ne loolu na ma mun a dimbale ma sukkandiku ci pour laajte ma bugg a laajte waat.
You said the prerogative of arrest and detention rested on the then head of state, Yaya Jammeh, and executed by his henchmen, the state guards, led by the late Musa Jammeh and Tumbul Tamba, and their men in the dead of night, who, for reasons best known to them, brought their detainees or suspects to the premises of the NIA agency. It's long. Let me interpret this in Wolof, and then perhaps maybe we would go for the lunch break and come back. But yeah, coffee break. I'm a fallen, you see, I'm going too far ahead of you. Mr. Sambu is making me work too hard, so I'm feeling it already. What that meant was, chobaregi pour japanit denchako Yaya Jammeh moko ame won momi won jitu rewmi ak nitam ñi nga xamne mom la jëlone pour ñi ko defal li nga xamne mom la bëgga moy ñi nga xamne ñu ki leen jité won di capitaine Moussa Jammeh ak Tumbul Tamba ak seen nit ñi nga xamne dañoo dem jëli nit ñi ci digg guddi ci reasons best known to them ci ay xalaat yoo xam ne ñoom ñoo ko xam jël leen indi leen ci NIA bi I would learn about them upon coming to work in the morning when the head of the security guards James Mendy would inform me.
Suma liggéey si nag ci suba ci laay doog a xam nag seeni mbir jamono joo xamee ne nag ki jiite wàlli kaaraange gi James Mendy moom ak koo yëgal.
And earlier on, you did say that persons were brought to the panel at the NIA by members of state guard stationed at State House under orders of President Jammeh.
Ne ñi nga xamne ñoom la ñu indi fofu ci panel bi ñi leen dé indi ay garde kat lañ ñoo xamne ñu ngi liggéey State House ci ron digali President Jammeh.
The late captains Musa Jammeh alias Malia Mungu and Tumbul Tamba and their men brought them in.
Dem si Yàlla si Malia Mungu ak dem si Yàlla Tumbul Tamba ak seeni nit ñoom leen dé indi ci biir.
They had direct contact with the then president.
Ñoom nak ñoo dé jokko ak president bi dara doxul seen digante.
Which I hadn't.
Te loolu xam naa ko.
I was later to learn
gannaaw gi nag ci laa yëg ne
some of the detainees or suspects were tortured or beaten during their interrogations. All this happened during the dead of night in my absence, without my knowledge. That is what you said in the statement. So what I am suggesting to you and adopt it to be yours, that by the time you put together these reports and submitted it, you had full knowledge that these reports were unlawful. These confessions were unlawfully obtained. In fact, in your own words, they were extorted out of the witness. They were coerced out of the witness. Those were your words. True.
True. I agree.
So my question is, when you submitted those reports, you knew that these reports were going to be the basis of prosecution.
I wouldn't want to argue with lead counsel on that. But I wouldn't want also to preempt Jammeh's mind and intention. Regards to those reports, to what he wanted to do.
Mr.
So I will agree.
Correct. Proceed, please.
I will agree with lead counsel. I just want to make this point clear.
Well, you have said, you used the word Yahya Jammeh was Machiavellian.
Yes.
We would come to that. We would come to that. But there was a procedure of how to deal with crimes in this country.
Yes.
And the procedure is when a crime is committed, the person would be investigated and arrested.
Correct?
Right. And if it is found that the person has committed an offense, especially an offense as high as treason,
then
the person would be charged before court. That was the system.
That was the system.
So there was every presumption that the same thing would happen to these people. Seeing that an investigation was commenced and an arrest was carried out. Do you agree? So it was foreseeable quite clearly these people will be prosecuted. True or false? And that the basis for that prosecution would be those reports that you prepared. True or false?
True.
And you know, or you knew at the time that the reports contained false information.
Yes.
Well, break time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Counsel. In the receipt of those reports to Jammeh, he described him as being Machiavellian. The Italian Niccolo Machiavelli must be laughing in his grave. We'll take a 30-minute break and come back at 12:15. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.